Hey, everybody. Thank you for your patience. But hey, we are here now. So my name is Todd Terrazas, and I am the Executive Director and President of the AILA community. We are a nonprofit based here in Los Angeles, focusing on accelerating innovation for social good. We typically host these events obviously in person, but given the restraints, we are doing this one virtually. But I hope that you can join us next week because we will be doing an in-person happy hour in Culver City if you're in the Los Angeles area. But today we've got an amazing lineup of content, all focused around exploring the ethical landscape of artificial intelligence. We've been doing this type of an event for the last 4 years. It's always changed names from AI in society and the ethical landscape of AI. But now we've really honed in on the branding of Responsible AI Symposium moving forward. And so today we're really proud to have our sponsor and partner in for this event, the AI Responsibility Lab, which you'll get to know a little bit later through different presentations and through an interactive breakout session that we'll be having later in the day. But first off, I really am honored to introduce our keynote speaker of the day. We have Eric Boyd, who is the Corporate Vice President of Microsoft. He leads the AI platform team within Microsoft's Cloud and AI division. The global organization includes Azure machine learning, cognitive services, cognitive search, and internal platforms that provide data, experimentation, and graphics and GPU cluster management to groups across Microsoft. Their mission is to make Microsoft's Azure AI platform the best platform for first and third-party customers. And so I'm really proud to have Eric up on the stage right now to go over a little bit more about what he has to offer. 1 second. Eric,
hi.
The show is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, really excited to be here. And maybe I can share my slides out as well. So yeah, really excited to be here. My name is Eric Boyd. I lead the AI platform team at Microsoft, as Todd mentioned. And so we're chartered with serving, our internal teams, teams like Office and Bing and Azure with critical AI infrastructure and services to really help them grow and scale, and then bringing those same services to our third parties. And one of the things that we work a lot on is to think about how we can develop AI for all of our customers and make sure that we're doing this really in a responsible way and thinking this through. At Microsoft, this is something we really take very seriously. Brad Smith, who's our president, he put it pretty well in his book. He says, when your technology changes the world, you bear a responsibility to help address the world that you have helped create. And so that's something that we really think a lot about and try and work hard on. So what I want to talk some about is, as we think about the responsible AI space, some of the just really technical and complex challenges that we have that really come up with the interaction between human behavior and society's complicated infrastructure, and the challenges and biases that we have existing in the real world, and how those show up. They don't magically disappear when we suddenly bring AI into the equation. And to think that through a little bit, like, why don't we start with an example where, imagine you or someone in your family is applying for a loan. This is something that virtually everyone at some point in their life will apply for: a loan to buy a car, a loan to buy a house, or something where you're being approved or denied credit by a bank. And when the bank makes their decision that they're going to grant or deny this loan, they're regulated. And so the US Equal Credit Opportunity Act therefore prohibits them from discriminating on race, religion, sex, a whole bunch of things like that. But one of the things that the loan industry in particular, as long as the rest of the world has been figuring out, is that AI is a really fantastic way to predict who's going to be good at paying loans back and who's not going to be good at paying loans back. And AI does a much better job than humans at considering, tens, hundreds, thousands of different factors, bits of information that we may have to help you consider, is this person going to be a good loan risk or not? But when an algorithm decides that you're not eligible for a loan, the questions that comes up is, well, how do you know this has been done for the right reasons? And how can we be sure that the algorithms that we're using are fair? And so as financial services organizations are looking to use AI and machine learning really to optimize their whole operations, this is a question that they literally can't move forward with these systems unless they can answer those questions. And so Ernst & Young is something that they were exploring in this space when they came to Microsoft with solutions. They saw the value that AI has in helping them make their loan decisions. And so they started to go and build models. And of course, they're pretty smart. They said, look, I don't want our model to be biased. And so as they trained their model, they made sure that there were no gender was not a feature, and age was not a feature, and all these sort of key characteristics were not, race was not a feature. And so they went and they trained and worked out, all right, what's the best model that we can come up with. And then they went and they tested the model against their test data. And one of the things that they found right off the bat is that the best model, even without being given access to gender as a feature, was still biased against women by about 7%. It was more like 7% more likely to give a loan to men than to women based on just the model as they trained it. And so, we worked with them and used our Fair Learn toolkit. This is a toolkit that we've developed and have made open source. And it gives you really a visual interactive dashboard to help you sort through, look, as you iterate through all of the different hyperparameters that you may want to tune with, all the different variations in the models, the different algorithms, you can really look at which models are performing really, really well, but perhaps in a less biased way. And so you can make that trade-off between fairness and model accuracy. And so they finally landed on a final model that really was within just a half a percentage point of the same accuracy of the original model, but was also completely fair against men and women. And so increasingly we're seeing regulators really looking at these models very closely, and so being able to document that we could sort of do this and really take it to be sort of much less biased by using these tools really enables us to move the bar forward with this. So we know that this stuff has real world applications. And so that's sort of one angle that we look at. We also see that a lot of the debate today is about sort of the flip side of transformative AI technology. We think about all the benefits that it can bring to a society and all the wonderful things that it's going to do, but there's also a bit of a debate on sort of the dystopian side of this as well, where we see things like bias, we see things like biometrics, and we want to think about corporate responsibility and how deep fakes and synthetic media are all coming together. And so we really feel this need to think this through in society, and we see the real power and pervasiveness that technology has on the world today. In 2016, the UK's super close vote on deciding should they leave the European Union or not. And a lot of people attribute the result to technology, specifically a lot of misleading Facebook ads targeted at vulnerable Brexit swing voters. And so it sort of poses the question of, now that we can algorithmically target people who might be considered more susceptible to misleading information, how does that really impact our free and fair elections as we want to go forward? Facial recognition is another area that we've seen just tremendous power on, and then also sort of tremendous responsibility sort of coming along with it. It's interesting in what is a remarkably divisive political climate these days. One thing that both sides clearly have agreed on is that this category of technology needs government regulation. And so many companies like Microsoft, we agree that there's a need for regulation of face recognition and technologies. The technology is going to move forward, but we really need governments to step in and play a role in helping land where is this appropriate and where is this not. And in the absence of that, we last year announced that we're limiting the use of our facial recognition systems. Microsoft will not sell this technology to police departments until we have a national law in place grounded in human rights that will govern the use of this technology. We're seeing synthetic media really jump up, and the ability that we're seeing to create the synthetic media, we've seen huge leaps in this, even just in the last couple of years. You can create, just 3D versions of people from still photographs. You can clone voices using small samples of recording audio, and then you can use those and make people say things that they definitely did not and you don't want them to say. And so this is a massive shift in the capabilities of technology, and we have to really teach the world, how do we think about how this technology fits into our lives, and as creators of it, make sure that we're putting sort of the right boundaries and the right roles in place against it. And so that's what we think about, is how are we going to address these challenges, and how do we develop AI responsibly? How do we develop responsible AI? And so this is something at Microsoft we focused a lot on. We're shooting to take really to lead in this space, both internally within our company as well as externally. And we intentionally pick complex and thorny areas, because those are the areas where we really develop real meaningful and sustainable practices that reduce the harms for as many people as possible. So we believe that solving these thorny problems gives us a lot of learnings that we can then apply both to build really great products from Microsoft, our first-party products, as well as making those same solutions available to our third-party customers that rely on us through products like Azure or through Office and the like. And we see just a ton of demand from our customers. They're all asking us to help them figure out, how do I think about responsible AI? Not just from a defensive play, but really wanting to make sure that they want to do the right thing. They want to develop their own technologies in a responsible way. Going back to Ernst & Young, they want to be making loan decisions that are fair and do that in a responsible way. And so it's a space where this field is really looking for help and for innovation and for people to really develop strong tools and platforms that are going to help move this forward. So at Microsoft, how have we approached this? We've thought about this through our core ethical principles. We published these principles several years ago, as these are the ways that we're going to think about our AI models, and everything that we develop, we're going to measure up against these principles. And so I'll quickly run through them. At sort of the heart of it, if you're going to build an AI system, it's got to be reliable and safe, and it's got to be private and secure, right? It needs to work. If I'm going to make a mission critical system, it better work. And the data and information that it contains also needs to be secure. And we wrap that with fairness and inclusion. We want to make sure that as we create these technologies that have benefits for society, we want to make sure that it benefits all of society. And so making sure it's fair and treats all stakeholders equally, and that it's inclusive, that everyone gets benefit from the technology that we're creating. We underlie that with transparency. We want to be very clear. How do we come up with the decisions that we're making, the tools that we made? How do we make these trade-offs and make them really understandable for users, so that they know the trade-offs that have gone into them and as they're using them? And lastly is our accountability. As creators of the technology, we have a responsibility for how it's going to be used and for the impact that it's going to have on society. And so we bring those principles to sort of really evaluate all of the different work that we do as we try and bring it all together. And so what I want to do is walk through 3 different examples of tools and practices that we have that we're bringing to really talk about how all those principles of ours are coming to light as we build our technology. So one of the key areas of focus is in tooling. We want to really get to the place where the ethics of AI is right in the middle of the code path, right? That as you get to build the model, train the model, check the source code in, make sure it's ethically responsible, and then deploy, that's literally right in the tooling that you've got. So one of the tools that we've created is our error analysis tool. And so we use this internally and sits right within the developer code flow and helps developers really understand, as you're looking at a model that you've trained and you're looking at how it performs against the test data that you've got, we want to show the errors that the model has. Where are those errors? And we do sort of clustering against them and sort of figure out which dimensions are those errors showing up most prominently in. And so this really helps you answer questions like, is the model accurate for all demographic groups? Are there particular environmental or input contexts where the model performs significantly better or significantly worse? How is this going to perform at the 99th percentile error percentile? And so we've used this really to look for bugs in our code and for all of the different systems that we have to understand, hey, we've built something, but based on the data that it trained and the tools and the parameters that we use, it actually isn't hitting the mark for what we want to do. And so we need to make sure that as just as part of our development process, sometimes you have bugs in it. We have places where the models are not performing the way that we want. And we've used this even to identify, even crazy things, right? We had a sensor that was basically a bad sensor in the data collection, and it showed up very quickly in the error analysis that, basically all this data coming from this one particular channel was off. And so it's a super valuable tool for us just to be able to understand where are things really working well and where, the errors are really pooling up in a particular area. Another area that we think a lot about is the experience design. When you're thinking through how a person is going to interact with AI, we really want to be deliberate about thinking through all of that design to make it so that responsible choices are just surfaced and built right into the product. So we have these sort of 4 major buckets that we think about. One is really thinking about, it's human-centered. We think this AI is generally for people, for them to use, and we want to think through the entire ecosystem of stakeholders and businesses and how everything really fits together as we're designing this for all of the people that are going to be using it. We think through inclusive design. We want to make sure that, as we're looking for solving a particular problem, that it's going to make the entire product better. And that we're thinking about, let's think about the product being used in ways that perhaps we didn't intend, and then making sure that it's going to actually perform the way that we intended to, for all types of people, for all types of usage, for all sort of situations. We think a lot about harms, and so we go and model them out. And that sort of is, innovation happens best with constraints, and so this is a constraint we want to think through, is how are we building systems, and then what are the ways that they could be used in negative ways? As you build a particular model, as you think about loans, they could be used to be unfairly biased against one set of person. As you think about, potentially having automated checkout systems in retail stores, do you think about the fact that now you have, sort of enforced surveillance on your employees, and what's that impact going to be? Is it going to get used for employee performance evaluations in ways where it may not be appropriate? And so just really thinking through the harms and making sure then that you're clear, all right, well, what are the steps we can take to mitigate and to manage those? And lastly, thinking through the tensions, the value tensions. There are a lot of places where we say, man, there's tremendous value that's enabled by this AI, and here are some of the potential harms that come with it, and how do we make sure that we're thinking through designing and balancing how all of those come together, and being really deliberate about it. Just to take one example of it, when you think about design, everyone's always looking for, I want this seamless experience where I just flow through the application and get exactly where I want to, efficiently, seamlessly as possible. But one of the things that we sometimes think about is intentionally showing seams in our system, mini speed bumps that we want to put in place to encourage sort of conscious decision making. So as an example of that, one of the places is in consent. Oftentimes you get this sort of terms of condition that you sort of mindlessly click accept on. But we want to be a little bit more deliberate and sort of put consent in a place where people can understand what are we actually asking for, and have a transparent exchange between what the users are being asked to give up and the value that sort of comes to them. And so you think of things like awareness. Users understand what they're being asked to sort of give access to. Is a particular part of their data? Is it particular part of information? We want to make sure they understand it. So we're not going to use sort of the terms of service legalese, but we want to use sort of non-jargon. This is what you're specifically being asked to do. And then we want them to have the choice. If it's a take it or leave it, you simply can't use this product, or you can agree to this. That's not really the freedom of choice that we want. You really want to be able to say, look, if you give this up, then here are the benefits that you're going to get from it. And you have real choice over that. And lastly is the control, the ability to be able to say, okay, this I like, this I don't like, and then I can change it without really giving up really the minimum viable functionality of the system as a whole. So the last area that I want to sort of talk about is an example that we had with a service that we launched last year called Custom Neural Voice. And so this is a synthetic speech service. It allows you to create really a voice font from a very small number of utterances. And so you could do anything from, I've had one made of my voice, and so now you can have this speech given this set of text written using exactly my voice. You can even speak in different languages. So now I can have my voice speaking in fluent Spanish, which I definitely don't speak fluent Spanish. And so there are a lot of really great possibilities with this. And lots of applications we can see, and we've worked with customers. The BBC really wanted to use it to have a bot that had their particular branded voice on it. Progressive wanted to use it because they wanted to have flow in character as part of their voice. So a lot of value, but I think you can obviously sort of some of the potential downsides that come to it as well. And so we wanted to really think about making sure that we could use this in the right context. And so we really asked ourselves two key questions. As we build this technology, do we think there's sufficient benefits to warrant its release? And at the same time, the second question is, can we design and build this technology in accordance with our AI principles and our governance processes in a way that really reduces the risk of harm? And so we worked very carefully through those questions, and we believe the answer to both is yes. And so, one of the things we did is we took a holistic perspective of the synthetic media ecosystem, all of the different players who might be in this, the different things that they might want to do, and we did an assessment of the harmful impact. And so one of the things we did is we interviewed voice actors, because we wanted to understand from them what protections would need to be in place. And so we created terms of use and code of conduct and transparency and consent requirements when working with voice talent. So voice talent now has to literally say in their own voice a speech that says, I understand that my voice is going to be used to create a synthetic voice. That's how you know that you have the consent of the voice talent. There are principles around protecting the owners so that it won't be proliferated, it won't be fake and misleading content, and we use that to really gate the access that we've created to this technology. We focused on transparency. We put a blog out that really walked through all of the thinking that we had and our commitment to how we're going to share this and what are the appropriate mitigations. And as we were very carefully thinking through this is something that really resonated with the customers that we went and talked to. And so this is not only the right thing to do ethically, but it is the right thing to do for customers and really helping make sure they want to feel safe. They want to feel that they're doing the right thing and that they're not going to do something that is going to cause abuses. And so we won a number of customers because they saw the value in the ethical approach that we took going forward with this. So those are a couple of just things that we think about in terms of how we're applying our AI principles to build responsible AI into all of the work that we do. We know that there are more complex scenarios coming that we're going to need to support. And this has got to cover the full stack, everything from how you collect data to the full product experience. So as we think about how we're going to move forward with this, some of the things we're thinking in the coming up next, we need to make sure that we're enacting our ethical principles. We've thought about what we want to do and how do we actually put that into practice, into engineering practice across all of our teams at Microsoft, and making sure that we're doing that carefully and systemically. We really want to make sure that from research all the way to product and incubations, that we've got the right tools in place to help make it easy to do these work. And so we're building these tools and testing them out internally, and then looking for ways that we can bring them out externally and share them with the world. We want this culture of responsible AI across the company. And so we're building champs within each team and making sure that each team learns what they need to do to be responsible. Just in last year in 2020, we had mandatory training for all of our 145,000 employees on how to do AI responsibly and some of the key concerns that we work with. And then lastly, we're focused on sharing what we learn and having global conversations around this. And so this is part of that work. We want to make sure that as we have moved forward, we want to help bring the whole industry with us. So a lot of good things happening in this space, a lot of progress that needs to come, but I'm really excited by sort of the potential of AI. It's just really limitless and where it can go. But I also want to make sure that we build the world that we want to live in. And so with that, I want to thank all of you for joining me today, and hope that you build really wonderful and responsible AI applications in your lives.